Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital. Now before I begin, be sure to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Major Pierre-Charles Lanfonts was a visionary, one of the most influential architects and planners in the newly formed United States, highly sought after by the most powerful men in the country. That was until he lost perhaps the greatest architectural commission in the history of the country. But more on that later. For first, we are going to cover everything you need to know about a jurisdiction's comprehensive plan and why it is important to you as a landowner or buyer. Number 1, a comprehensive plan, also called a general plan, master plan, or land use plan, is a document designed to guide the future actions of a community as it grows. It explains a future vision with long-term goals and objectives for all activities that affect the local government. As such, a comprehensive plan is developed by a local unit of government, whether that's your city, town, or county. Number 2, a comprehensive plan serves a number of functions. It provides continuity to the community over time. It also balances the competing interests of various residents and businesses. It protects investments by, say, making sure a newly installed sewer line is not torn up 10 years later when the government decides to create a new public building over the same location. It plans development in a way that protects valued resources. This is another way of saying it balances the goal of growth and development with the protection of things that are important to the community, such as open space. It promotes economic development primarily by creating plans for new construction, expansion, and growth. And it allows citizens to express a collective vision of their community. Number 3, master planning has a long history in the United States and has been around since the earliest days of the country, which brings us back to Major Pierre-Charles Lanfonts. In September 1789, the Major had written to Washington offering his services for the master plan of the new federal capital, an offer that Washington accepted a year later. And Lanfonts embarked on an ambitious plan to transform a sleepy section of swampland into a magnificent new capital, creating one of the first and most famous examples of a city master plan. Shown here is that plan for Washington, D.C. But then Lanfonts tore down the home of his boss's nephew and ruined everything. Although we'll get to that at the end of this video. For now, we have a few more things you should know about comprehensive plans. Number 4, a comprehensive plan will generally have 6 basic characteristics. It's comprehensive, thus the name, which is another way of saying it is complete. It is long-term, usually having a vision that is at least 10 to 20 years out. It's general, so it encompasses the entire community. It is focused primarily on physical development. If we think back to Lanfonts Plan for DC, that was primarily about developing buildings. So in this way, the comprehensive plan ultimately relates to physical design proposals. Number 5, every jurisdiction has a slightly different comprehensive planning process, but there are some overarching guidelines that most areas will follow. First, there should only be one official comprehensive plan at a time. The comprehensive plan should also be formally adopted by the legislative body. There should be a period of public debate prior to the plan's adoption. In a similar vein, the plan should be easily understandable and available to the public. Number 6. Again, every jurisdiction has a slightly different process for creating a comprehensive plan, but at a high level, the planning process looks something like this. The local government will create a committee that is in charge of overseeing the creation or amendment of the comprehensive plan. This committee will then go about collecting data on the existing conditions of the town or county. This data is analyzed, and goals and recommendations are created based on what the data shows. So for example, if the data shows that the housing stock is not keeping up with demand, then the comprehensive plan will likely have a large section about how to increase the number of housing units available. After goals and recommendations are created, the committee will oversee a series of forums, meetings, and surveys designed to engage the public and get citizen feedback, at which point this feedback is incorporated and the final plan is created. Number 7, and the final plan usually has at least the following components: a section on land use intentions in the jurisdiction, a plan to meet the community's housing needs, a plan for how people and goods will be appropriately moved around the town, Or put more plainly, this is the section that deals with roads and public transportation. A plan for expansion and improvement of public infrastructure, facilities, and utilities. A discussion on both the short and long-term implementation strategies. And a plan for the protection of natural and historic resources. Number 8. Now, despite what you may think, having heard of how much goes into the creation of a comprehensive plan, in most areas, a comprehensive plan is not actually legally binding. To be implemented, the goals in the comprehensive plan have to be incorporated into a community's ordinances. For example, the zoning ordinance or capital improvement plan. And one of the most important things to understand about comprehensive or master plans is that they are not the same as the zoning ordinance. So as a landowner, one of the most important ways in which you will interact with a comprehensive plan is around land use regulations that govern your property. Now, the actual land use regulations that affect your property are going to be laid out in the zoning ordinance. But the zoning ordinance is designed to implement the comprehensive plan. So ultimately, you will want to look to the comprehensive plan to understand what the jurisdiction's land use intentions are for your property. And finally, this leads us to number 9. If all of this sounds a bit esoteric to you, keep in mind that as a landowner, you will want to engage in your jurisdiction's planning process. This is because, as we just mentioned, the comprehensive plan's land use goals for your property are going to affect what you can do on your land once they have been implemented in the zoning ordinance. Thus, whenever there is a new community planning process going on, you should be involved so you can make sure that the land use goals are in tune with how you want to use the land. But let's go back to Lanfonts Plan for DC. Like most visionaries, Pierre Lanfont was a man with perhaps a slight case of megalomania, believing his grand vision held higher authority than the mere mortals who had commissioned it. Unfortunately for Lanfont, while Washington may have been one of those most rare of clients as committed to an architectural vision as the architect, Washington was not Lanfont's boss. Oversight of the planning and construction of the federal capital had been placed in the hands of 3 commissioners, men who were perhaps more concerned with appeasing the district's wealthy landowners and keeping costs down than architectural excellence. From the get-go, Lanfont would frequently go over their heads, speaking directly to the president. And one day, Washington received an angry letter from a Daniel Carroll, nephew to one of the 3 commissioners. According to Carroll, Lanfont had begun demolishing his home, having already succeeded in entirely destroying the roof and most of the upper story. Washington immediately wrote to Lanfont, pleading with him to show some prudence. But Lanfont continued all the same, although he did make one concession. He sent a note to Carroll asking him if he would prefer to destroy his home himself. Incensed, the commissioners threatened to resign unless Washington got Lanfont under control. Lanfont, in turn, threatened to resign rather than subordinate himself, and to his surprise, Washington accepted. Upon Lanfont's departure, Carroll's home was rebuilt, albeit a few lots over, and construction of the full plan was never completed. Yet Lanfont's vision would outlast him, Washington, and the commissioners. For in 1901, the Senate, embarrassed at the decrepit state of the Capitol, commissioned a team of architects and planners to complete the Capitol plan, largely based on Lanfont's original design, which highlights perhaps the defining characteristic of master plans: their ability to endure when the vision they express is compelling enough. All the more reason for you to engage in your own community's planning process. But do you have any stories about comprehensive or master plans? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down listings at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.